Before I begin, big disclaimer. I am not a professional. I'm not even an amateur. I'm honestly just trying to get more than like 13 views on a video. These are strictly my opinions, nothing more, nothing less. My word is not law. Secondly, spoilers ahead of whatever the heck I'm working on for this video. Nothing I hate more than getting a game spoiled for me, so I'd hate to do it to you. Cheers. This is going to be a new series of videos that I'm trying out that I'm going to call How Have I Not Played? The rules are simple. Take a game that I've never played before and give my thoughts right after one playthrough and one playthrough only. My goal is to eventually have people comment games, and if I haven't played them, give them a try. This allows me to try new genres, explore different styles, and overall, step out of my comfort zone just a little bit. At the end of each of these videos in this series, I will place it into one of these categories, these well-made categories. The first category is sucks an egg. The video game is just really, really bad. Second category is means the game is alright. Wouldn't highly recommend it, but it was alright. Next is recommend, meaning I thought it was good enough that I would say other people should spend their money and play it. And then, holy shit, that's good. Which, I feel like I don't need to explain that one. So without further ado, cheers to this first video, and how have I not played Eastward? I myself am not a major indie fan. Indie games are fun and have some pretty great stories, and I don't dislike them, but they're just not my cup of tea. But this one indie game has stood out to me. Reviews over the first year of its existence has convinced me to give it a try. Eastward has a surprisingly in-depth story told through its unique visuals and amazing art style. I get so caught up in this world full of big AAA games that I forget that stories can be told, and even told very well, without crazy realistic graphics, cinematic set pieces, and millions of dollars for its budget. So if you are an indie fan and know this game all too well, then hop in the comments and share your opinions. Eastward is an independent project brought to us by a Shanghai indie studio called Pixpill. You play as two protagonists, John and Sam, and go on a crazy adventure to the quote-unquote outside world. It is an 8-bit style adventure RPG with some combat elements and some puzzle solving. What I will say right off the bat is that the puzzles within the game are not too complex, but they have enough style and keep you engaged. This game can be pretty accessible to just about any style of gamer. Although some of the boss encounters can be slightly challenging, I preferred to play this as more of a casual play. It wasn't some Soul-style challenge that made me want to throw my controller through the roof or anything like that, so I think that's a plus in my opinion. I kind of used it as like my bedtime story. Given the art style and the idea of the casual gameplay, I decided to play this on my Nintendo Switch. Personally, I believe games like this are the Switch's bread and butter. It runs incredibly smooth, and I found zero issues with loading, crashes, or bugs. Plus, playing it handheld on the go gave me great incentive to continue the story. The controls were simple, and even in the hardest parts of the game, I never felt like the clunky Joy-Cons got in the way or were too difficult to manipulate. On the visual side of things, Eastward brings an amazing amount of detail to this 8-bit style world. The art design gives you that retro 90s nostalgic Game Boy feel, but also utilizes the more modern power of the consoles of today. It has a very wide color palette, and each section of the environment has tiny little details within the world. When items explode and the clothes and hair move on characters, each character actually has some facial expressions and small details within their character designs. You can see ripples in John's jacket or even the spaces between characters' fingers. All these fine details that are still present within the game's nostalgic art style. You can even see reflections of characters in the mirror. Hell, you can even open and close toilet lids. I mean, come on, what more do you want? Like most indie games, the game's art style doesn't hold the game back at all. It actually feels like the game's story was meant to be told this way. The game is absolutely beautiful and gives a very peaceful vibe to it. The most nostalgic feel that this game gives you is in its music. Joel Korolitz, man, I really hope I'm saying his name right, composed an incredible soundtrack for this adventure. I honestly found myself humming the tune to the game over scene every single time I died. It was way too catchy. Sorry. Eastward's biggest strength, however, is its surprisingly engaging and heartwarming story. I want to only give a little synopsis here as to not spoil it too much. I know the game is only a year old, but if people haven't experienced it and for whatever reason this video inspires them to do so, I really don't want to reveal too much. With that being said though, the spoiler warning is still in effect. We play as John and Sam in this post-apocalyptic future. John is an older man and a silent protagonist, and for the most part is the quote-unquote main character. I use that term very loosely because throughout the campaign you also play as Sam, and she definitely earns her stripes. She becomes a more playable character, and this is her story, with John more as the father figure on the side. John and Sam are exiled from their hometown of Potcrock, an underground tunnel city full of miners to which they call diggers. We find out through a very lengthy opening of the game that John is not in fact Sam's biological father. John came across Sam during one of his digs and adopted her for his own. Right at the get-go, Sam is a very mysterious character. We initially have no idea where she is from and no idea who she is. The opening of the game was originally going to be my biggest complaint of the game overall. It took approximately 2 to 2.5, maybe almost 3 hours of playtime just to get to the title card. At that point, I stopped and Googled how long this campaign was, and holy shit, 20 to 30 hours? I had this prejudgment that because it was an indie game with this art style that it was only going to be like 7 hours long, which I guess goes to show how little I know about indie games or games of this variety in general. But I decided to stick with it. After all, it was the entire point of this series that I'm trying to create. How have I not played this? And I was very pleased with the result. The first village you encounter in the game is called Greenberg. You meet a nice woman named Uva who introduces you to the mayor and essentially makes you a resident of the town. This is where I highly recommend you gather some patience. This entire chapter is basically a chore simulator, and it gets nice and cozy and gives you a really peaceful vibe. Uva even begins to fall in love with John, who is a silent character, by the way, so I mean, I guess it makes some pretty funny dialogue, but it's weird to watch. Overall, they make the area their home. They're given a cabin to sleep in, and Sam really begins to interact with the NPCs and make friends throughout the village. I enjoyed this part of the game, but it felt like the story wasn't going to progress anytime soon, and it was taking a while to get anywhere in the plot. I almost thought that it was the entire middle section of the game. But the end of this chapter really shows Eastward's true colors. See, throughout the beginning of the story, we hear, or I guess read, about this thing called miasma. Okay, the problem with these games only having text is I have no idea how to pronounce anything, so I'm going with miasma. Miasma is essentially a black cloud acting as a plague that kills anything and everything in its path. Sam slowly sees visions of an alternate version of herself that we eventually know is Mother. Once John and Sam encounter a lab filled with some robots and creatures, Mother activates the lab, causing the miasma to spread throughout Greenberg. This moment becomes incredibly intense. The wonderfully crafted art style mixed with the ominous music playing in the background shifts the game's happy tone to a very dark place. The entire town of Greenberg and everyone we just met and became friends with is destroyed by the black cloud that is miasma. All the residents you just helped and developed that wonderful relationship with are gone. A simple, heartfelt moment where we all take a photo at a meal in the village is now darkened by death. All we see on screen is miasma tearing buildings apart, leaving the gruesome deaths of those inside completely up to our imagination. It was this moment that completely shifted my perspective of the game's narrative. It was happy, cheerful, full of great characters and friendships that are just trying to survive this horrific plague that can knock at their door at any moment. The pacing of Eastward, although I thought was slow to begin with, turned out to be fantastic. This writing team definitely knew how to use time to their advantage. Learning about these characters for several hours just to have them wiped away unleashed some jaw-dropping emotions that I did not believe that this game was capable of. At this point in the story, the player now has a ton of questions. Who is Mother, and why have they unleashed this plague, and who are all these little alien-looking things in jars? We really just don't know. As for spoiling the game, that is the most detail I want to give in terms of the narrative, because the story progresses beyond this point and does in a beautiful and heartwarming way. I originally wanted this project to initially be a retrospective of the game itself, but now I see this as more of an opportunity to start a series of games I thought wouldn't be good, and now seem to have this different effect on me that Eastward did. These characters are well written and have quite a bit of life to them. Each setting brings something new to the table, and you learn about this crazy world and its history. It traps you into thinking it's a fun little happy adventure and nothing more, and then punches you in your happy little face with plot twists, death, and damn near sends tears down your cheek. You'll read some dialogue and wonder, how the hell did a text thread just hit me in the feels like this? But there is some negatives. Number one, NPCs talk too long. There's a ton of dialogue between action and puzzle solving, and each character has a ton. This works out well for the main story and the narrative, but absolutely exhausts you from wanting to speak to any adjacent characters or anybody around these villages. Second, even with the art style they were going with, I believe the combat could have been a little bit more complex, have a little bit more variety. I understand it's not the game's main focus, but the boss sections do an awesome job of making the combat a puzzle itself. You not only have to learn attack patterns, but pay attention to your environment as well to see what you could use to assist you in the fight. But outside of boss encounters, the enemies are a little bland, and you can kind of skip over them entirely if you wish, making it very easy to just walk from section to section and just avoid combat as a whole. And third, I think the game's side content could be reduced, and some of it probably could be taken away altogether. I'm not gonna lie, the Earthborn minigame never grabbed me at all. If you like it, I'm sorry. I personally never understood the whole game within a game thing, so maybe it's just me, but in my opinion, if I wanted to play a card game or a Pokemon style battle simulator thing, I would just go play those things. But of course, this is just my opinion. These are all just little nitpicks for an otherwise fairly consistent experience. I wouldn't say the game lives up to some of the crazy stories told in our favorite games over the years, but it was very fun and very engaging. It was also very tragic and had some crazy plot twists. It had these moments that genuinely made me feel sad and other moments that redeemed those moments of sadness. The game should be praised for its risky pacing and not being afraid to pull the trigger on some of your favorite characters. It is long and almost feels drawn out, but by the end you will feel very rewarded for your patience. So I guess that begs the question, how have I not played Eastward? If I had to answer that honestly, probably fear of paying money for something that I prejudged and thought I wasn't going to like. What do I say about it now? Well, I'm going to go ahead and put it in that recommend category. It's not the craziest game I've ever played in the world, but damn if I wasn't surprised at how much I actually enjoyed the experience. As always, if you watched my video, thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the other videos on my channel and comment in this video if there's some games out there that you think, how has he never played this? This was a great opportunity to try something new, and I hope I get the same experience again. But until the next one, thanks for watching. Cheers.